This program is a presentation of UCTV for educational and non-commercial use only.
Good afternoon, everybody. First of all, of course, I want to express my thanks for the organizers of this meeting, the directors of CARTA and Jean-Pierre Changeux for inviting me here. It's always a great pleasure for me to come in San Diego. I feel a little bit unfavorized after the previous speakers and the one who is going to follow me, because as you'll see, there is very little evidence of Neanderthal art. But the nice thing about little evidence in paleoanthropology and archaeology is that when there is little evidence, there is a lot of literature. And I think I've been able to put together something about Neanderthal art. It's a bit difficult for me to speak in general about art, and I think in the course of my speech I'll try to tackle some of the issues that has been already evoked by other speakers, like aesthetics, symmetry, and symbolism. And maybe this is the kind of issues we can discuss about Neanderthals. So just before I start with the production of the Neanderthals, I want to say a few words about what are the Neanderthals. And actually, this is where probably I would be more expert, as I'm a paleoanthropologist. I'm used to work with fossils like this one. If we look at the phylogenetic tree of human evolution during the last 2 million years, we see that we have several species, and in the course of the last 500,000 years, the main story is the separation of two lineages. One African lineage, which is going to lead to our direct ancestors, the modern humans, and another lineage, which is parallel to this one, which emerged in Eurasia and which give birth to the Neanderthals. The Neanderthals are extremely interesting from an evolutionary point of view because they share many features with us. They are large hominins with a big brain. They have many aspects of their biology which is close to us, but they are different. And they are the last split point on the evolutionary tree of humans, and this, I think, is what makes them so interesting, because anything we say about the Neanderthals, somehow it's something we say to define ourselves. The Neanderthals, as I said, evolved in Eurasia, and this is more or less their geographical distribution. We know no Neanderthal in Africa. Neanderthals, I mean, the Neanderthal lineage is known somewhere between 400,000 and 30,000, and we find them associated with lithic assemblages that we call Acheulean. So these lithic assemblages where we find these nice hand axes, like the one Jean-Pierre Changeux showed a while ago. But most of the Neanderthals are associated with what we call Middle Paleolithic or Mousterian industries. I'm not going to enter this aspect. There are a lot of fantasies about Neanderthals, and this is almost inevitable because, as I said, Neanderthals are our sister group. And it's very difficult to be objective about our sister group. So as you see here, there are many ways to see the Neanderthals. In past, there was a way that was a bit brutish, like this one. But today, I must say, there is an opposite trend developing, which is to humanize the Neanderthals as much as possible, which I think it's as much exaggerated as the previous one. For some of my colleagues, I'm afraid Neanderthals are just sort of funny Eskimos who lived 60,000 years ago, and so they had bad luck because there was no computers and no internet. But if they would have, they would be here, they would probably give the talk about art. I think one of the main difficulty is that we have really a problem in conceiving humans that would not be completely humans. And of course, we know that in the last 6 or 7 million years, there was probably something like 15 or 17 different species of hominins. And these different species of hominins had all some pieces of humankind, but none of them were like us. And this is the whole challenge of paleanthropology. This is a slide for Kevin, the student that was waiting for me here in San Diego. This is also something to continue on the mode of the fantasies about Neanderthals. It's a bone with 2 holes that has been described in the literature as a flute. And so people have described this object like the demonstration for the production of music by Neanderthals. Later, it was proved that it's a juvenile femur of bear with 2 holes which have been likely made by the teeth of another bear. And but the fact is that it's possible to produce some kind of music with that, and there are people who have been really good at doing that. But I also heard people playing symphonies with a bottle of Coca-Cola, and so I'm not very impressed by this kind of demonstration. So now if we look really at the archaeological record, as I said, we have very little to chew about Neanderthal art. What we mostly have is objects like these ones, pieces of bones with incisions, nothing like a realistic picture of anything. And of course, the whole discussion is whether these kind of incisions, they are sort of accidental or if they mean something. There are some objects which are more, I would say, convincing, like this. Here it's called a pebble. Actually, it's a fossil. It's a small fossil, which is carved with a cross. And this looks really like something intentional and symmetrical. I'm not sure we can prove any kind of aesthetical sense in the Neanderthals with this kind of object, but certainly an attraction for symmetry. And this aspect of being attracted by symmetry is something that has been commented a lot about Neanderthals, mostly because they produced artifacts like this one, which required a lot of skill to be made so symmetrical. And as a matter of fact, we are not quite sure that this would really change very much their efficiency as tools for butchering, for example. But we do have hand axes like this one, which are almost perfectly symmetrical. Experts in flint snapping say that it's quite difficult to produce this kind of object. It's a big investment. It's not easy. And certainly, it means something. Just to remind you what Jean-Pierre Changeux was saying, symmetry, or the attraction for symmetry, and aesthetics are 2 different things. And actually, they are embedded in different parts of our brain. And I must say, with the Neanderthals, probably what we have is a meeting between this attraction for symmetry and a very high level of technical skill. But can we call that aesthetic? I'm not quite sure about that. And again, aesthetics, maybe we should not be too impressed with that, because we know that we are programmed to mate with symmetrical objects, and not just us, but many vertebrates are attracted by symmetry. It's a part of our genome that control that. Another thing interesting about these hand axes is that there is at least one occurrence where we have here on the cortex of a hand axe a little fossil that has been apparently preserved by the maker of this hand axe. So it's sort of decoration somehow, but it's not made by humans. It's something which is naturally there. And actually in the archaeological record, we have some examples where we see that Neanderthals collected strange objects, things with a special color, a special shape, fossils, for example, special minerals. But again, all these objects are not handmade. They are just found and collected. This hand axe lead me to discuss a second aspect of Neanderthal behavior, is this question of symbolism, which is a different issue than aesthetic or symmetry. And we certainly have Neanderthal burials. There are some which are known in Western Europe, in the Near East, also in Eastern Europe. However, these burials, which seems to have some kind of symbolic meaning, are very simple. They are nothing like what we find later with modern humans. In the period after 40,000 years in Europe or elsewhere in the world, we have burials which are extremely rich in terms of objects, pigments that has been deposited in the burial. We have nothing like that with Neanderthals. We have something which is body-centered. It's just the body which is there. And again, we can wonder what's the meaning of these kind of burials. Interestingly, in this kind of artistic fantasy about Neanderthal burials, you see that the artist has drawn a sort of club here, buried with the dead person. And one of the questions is whether or not we have this kind of objects that has been really deposited in Neanderthal burials. And I must say that most of the time the answer is no. We don't have anything like that. We just have pits that has been refilled with the sediments which was around, and this sediment is full of artifacts, and it's quite common to find artifacts in the refilling of the pit. There is one exception that has been mentioned by Jean-Pierre, which is quite, I think, interesting, is the case with Sima de los Huesos. So Sima de los Huesos, it's a site in North Spain, which is quite old. We are probably around almost 500,000 years. And it's a shaft in the depths of a cave about half a mile from the entrance of the cave. Actually, it's quite difficult to get there. And in this shaft, about 30 human bodies apparently were thrown. And there is nothing else in this deposit but these human bodies plus some carnivores that apparently fell there by accident. The interpretation of the site by the Spanish colleagues is that this is an intentional deposit of dead bodies. They have a very peculiar demographic profile, and a very intriguing thing about this site is that there is only one stone artifact that has been found in this site. And this object that has been called Excalibur is again, it's an hand axe, and it's a very beautiful hand axe. It's an hand axe made with a very nice material, and we can see probably with this example a case for symbolic behavior in Neanderthals. Now to finish with the different aspects of the possible artistic expression in Neanderthal, there is the question of the pigments. We do have in some sites pigments which have been found. These pigments are usually black pigments. It's manganese dioxides. And sometimes they are shafted, they are shaped in like pencils, or they are blocks like that with some lines. The problem with this is, of course, we don't know really what they were doing with that. Some people have imagined that They have been used for skin decoration, for skin painting. So these guys here who pretend to be Neanderthals, but you see right away that they are not, although they are trying to do something funny with their mouths, have rather sophisticated paintings. It could be something more simple like that. Again, the question is that we don't know if these pigments were used for body ornaments, and we don't know what kind of signification had this behavior, if it ever existed. There is a possibility that has been brought by some, that the pigments that we find in Neanderthal sites or in sites of other groups of hominins were used for some kind of totally utilitarian purpose. And for example, there are experiments showing that mixing pigments with some glue helps to stabilize the glue for hafting some lithics, for example. So, about 40,000 years ago, we have in Europe the emergence of modern humans, humans that look very much like you and I, and they are known by human remains like these ones. It comes from a site called Pestera Cuoase in Romania. There are some also demonstration of this invasion of Europe by modern humans via the archaeological record. And these humans for sure are going to express some kind of art, and Randy White, I'm sure, is going to show you a number of these examples. What's interesting about this process of colonization of Europe by the modern humans is that it occurs probably at least 40,000 years ago by C14 calendar. It's possible that there are industries which could have been made by modern humans older in Europe, but we are not sure because we don't have any fossil humans associated with these industries. But in a site called Willensdorf in Austria, we do have origination assemblages which are close to 39,000 years old by C14 date. And we are pretty sure that the origination was made by modern humans. Interestingly, at the time when this origination developed in Central and Eastern Europe and later in Western Europe, we do have other lithic assemblages, and at least in one case, maybe two cases, we know that some of these assemblages that were produced at the time of the development of the origination in Europe were made by Neanderthals, by the last Neanderthals. And we have, with the one of these assemblages called the Chateaubriand, Neanderthal remains found in at least two different sites in France. The interesting thing about these last Neanderthals that were contemporary with the first modern humans in Europe is that, first of all, we have overlap in time which might be of several millennia, and second, that they apparently produced body ornaments like the one that the modern humans were making and carrying. There was a lot of discussions about the body ornaments found in one of the two sites I mentioned, Arcis-sur-Cure. There was different hypotheses. First of all, the possibility that it was a contamination of these layers, but I would say most people today think that they were made by Neanderthals. They were not just trade or found, and of course I would say the most likely interpretation of these objects is that they were the result of some kind of acculturation of the Neanderthals by modern humans. Again, the question about these objects is, it's interesting because it shows that Neanderthals were probably able to produce this kind of things. It's not so surprising because we know they are very crafty at making objects. But now the question is, first of all, can we call this art? may look aesthetic to us. I'm not sure it's aesthetic for Neanderthal. And more importantly, the question is what the significance of this kind of object. If we look on the side of the modern humans, on the side of the invaders, we know that a long time before they moved into Europe, they were starting to use objects like shells, likely to do body ornaments. And these shells have been first described in a site of South Africa called Blombos, but now we have the same kind of things in North Africa. In 2 months from now, I'm going to be working on the field on a site where we have exactly the same kind of Nassarius, dated around 80,000 years ago, and there is in the Journal of Human Evolution a new paper that has been published a week ago about other shells like that found in a site 90,000 years ago in Israel. So there was something going on with the modern humans and the body ornaments, and I think, and I want to finish on that, that these objects are probably more, again, to put on the side of the capacities for symbolism in this population more than on the side of aesthetic. In most of the groups of recent hunter-gatherers where we know these kind of body ornaments made of teeth or shells, we know that these objects have mostly a role for marking the status of individuals within a group or to identify different groups. And I think this was the main function of this in the Paleolithic time also. Clearly, modern humans from the Upper Paleolithic had these objects. It's possible that these objects had the same function in the Neanderthals, but we are not quite sure. In any case, and I want to finish with that, we don't have any example of what we call art in the Neanderthals. Just to show you that I'm not such a bad guy, I'm not trying to dig a ditch between Neanderthals and us. And in fact, I'm for incorporating even much more hominins and non-hominins into our human family. I offer you this picture of Michael, a gorilla who lived not far from here some years ago near Stanford. It's a gorilla who learned sign language and was a good painter. And he was able to make a pretty decent portrait of his dog, Apple. Thank you.